Welcome to our first session of 2024, where we're going to look at what to do with the dried flowers that we dried together in the autumn, late summer, autumn of last year. I wrapped mine up in white tissue paper after they dried and put them away in a drawer, and haven't looked at them since, and then brought them out this week to have a look and see. And I was very pleased that some of the colours have maintained, and sorry, just something on my screen, and that it's kept them in really good condition. So if you haven't done it before and are thinking of doing it in this year coming, that's the way to store them. If you can just get any white tissue paper or one without colour, wrap them up gently and just put them away until you've decide that the time has come. So what do we do with them? What shall we do? So I'm going to just talk about a couple of simple ways of using them, and maybe making them as presents to take home for family, to decorate your family house, or to decorate where you get together. And so what I've done was I put out all my dried flowers, and I had a look to see which ones are the most fragile. Some, unfortunately, do start falling apart, really is the word for it. So I've had to put those away. And I've tried to use the ones that are still holding their nice form and colour and so on. And so I put together a few here. And what I'm going to do is to dismantle them for you so you can see what I did and how we can display them. So I'll start with this small hand-tied arrangement here. And I've tied it up with a piece of twine. So you could just use it as a nice hand-tied decoration and give it to someone, or we can put it into a container, and I'll talk about that in a minute too, what sort of containers. So I've got some poppy heads, which are fantastic. They really hold their shape, and they're also quite robust. So you know they're not going to get destroyed by wrapping them up or putting them away. So I've got several poppy heads, which are wonderful. I've got this nice yellow Achillea, which is Achillea gold plate. And that all the Achilleas I've got, and I've got a few more to show you, have really held their colour well. And again, nice strong stem, so they won't disintegrate either. So I've got that. Then I've got some slightly more fragile plants as well, with a bit more colour. So it was nice to be able to have some orange colour with my, sorry, pulling them to bits now. Some orange with my Montbretia. Very delicate, but that's okay. It's just giving us a little bit more colour and texture, because what we really want is to have different shapes, not all the same shape. Also some purpley coloured flowers here. I've got two which have also managed to dry very well and stay whole, so that you can see the shape of them and the colour of them too. So those have done well. And then some lovely feathery grasses, or pampas grass, or any of the ornamental grasses are really useful as a lovely soft background. So for a small arrangement, what you want to do is to get, as I say, a group of different types of shapes, colours, whatever you want to choose. And what's nice is to have one main big flower, dried flower. So I've chosen this Achillea, which is nice, not too big, as the main flower for this arrangement. And then I thought, well, what would go well? Well, the nice background is, of course, having these lovely feathery flower grasses and so on. Now, when you do arrangements, it's quite a nice idea to work in odd numbers. I know this isn't always going to work because you may only have two of something or whatever, but if you work in odd numbers, you get a better arrangement with those numbers. So I've got three feathery grasses, and I'm going to put those behind the yellow Achillea. I've got the Montbretia, which gives us a little bit of orange, which is quite a nice colour. It sort of brightens up the arrangement. So I'm going to lie those down together and think about, well, what would be nice? These strong poppy heads would be fantastic to go with them. So I'm going to, again, arrange them. Now, you can either arrange them in a pot or you can just arrange them on your table like I am. And so you can play about with them and think, are they the right length? Because the other thing is not to have things very long, because they'll tend to fall about in your arrangement. So better to make things the right sort of length. And also these lovely dark red flowers, these purpley colours, which are nice here. Now, what am I going to put them in and how am I going to use them? I could just put them all together and make this nice arrangement and then just tie it up with some twine, some natural coloured twine that you have for the garden. And that would make a nice little bouquet to give to someone. Now, remember, because they're dried, they're not alive, so you don't need to give them water. There's nothing you need to do apart from just make sure that they're displayed well. Now, what could I put them in? I've thought about different things I could put them in. I could put them in an old mustard jar, or perhaps an old tin of biscuits that I got at Christmas. So I could take the top off and use that. Again, not worrying about having to put water in, although it would hold water if I wanted it to. So that would be quite nice, but these have all got quite big holes in them. So I think what I need is something with a narrower neck. So what I did think about was to use milk bottles, just these small milk bottle containers, and to decorate them, which is another task that the group can do, to make them more interesting. You could do different things. So this one has had just patterns cut out of magazines and stuck on with a Pritt stick. And that's quite fun, that could be completely covered. I didn't finish it off, but it could be completely covered, and that's fun to use. Or another idea I had was to stick on tissue paper, screwed up, to make it look like almost little flowers. And again, screwed up tight, Pritt stick on the bottom, press it on, and that could be all round the container. And the handle is quite useful because you can actually hold it and carry it and so on. Another idea I had for using a milk bottle was to decorate it with some ribbons I'd got. Now, these are Christmassy colours, but this is all I had at the time. But you could choose any colours. The bottom one is stuck on with a Pritt stick. The others have bows. You could go to town with that and put even thicker ribbon or whatever else. And I'm sure you probably have some other ideas you could use for disguising the fact that it's a milk bottle and just making it fun. And that would be a great tabletop task for people. And some people perhaps might find that dealing with the dried flowers is quite a difficult thing to do. You have to be quite light fingered because they are delicate. So I'm going to put it into this nice milk bottle here and just see if it fits, if I need to add anything. But I think it's made quite a nice tabletop display. I could add some more if I had some more of any of it, but this one I think is quite pretty. I've done another one just to show you so you can see different things, because you may well have dried different things as well. Now, there's nothing you need to do now you've done your display. This is it. It doesn't need any water. It may be because the pot is quite light that something like putting in some stones first into the container would just keep it more balanced so that it's not top heavy. So I've done that as well there, and there they are. And that should do it. If you want, you can undo the twine and let the arrangement relax, but that will last as long as you can. If you want to keep the colours of the dried flowers, try and keep it out of the bright sunlight, if you're lucky to have bright sunlight. Another one I've done, just to give you an idea of what you can use and what things look like, is this little one. Same idea, one main sort of bigger flower head and some smaller ones around it. So I've done this one, which is an allium flower head. which has got this lovely sort of circular globe-like um, uh, form and is quite attractive. So that's a great one. Alliums have lovely seed heads, so that's a great one to do. Again, Achilleas. I've got here ones that were white Achilleas, and they have turned a sort of purpley colour, which is rather nice. So a soft purpley colour, which will look nice with that allium. There we are. So I've put a couple of those. And I thought, what else have I got in that sort of colourway that I could put together? And I thought about these Love in the Mist, Nigella flower heads, seed heads, which give you some really nice feathery, but round shapes. And so those are very easy to dry, and they naturally form those seed heads on the plant once the flower is over. So they're grown by seed, they're annuals, which a lot of these plants are, as well as perennials. So you could be planning perhaps for this coming year what you might grow that would be good to dry and works well. So Love in the Mist is fantastic. Once you've sown it, and the flowers grow and then you get the seed heads, you can just allow the seeds to drop onto the bed and get flowers for the next year. So you really only have to buy the seeds once, and then you can have seeds forever on. So just to brighten it up, here's some calendula, some marigolds. You can see the orange of the marigolds. And they dry quite well. They're a little more delicate than some, but they've dried quite well, and I'm quite pleased with them. So I've put in here a couple of the orange marigolds to brighten up the whole, sorry, these stick to my jumper, to brighten up the arrangement. I only have two of them, so although I say in threes or fives or odd numbers, I only had two that actually survived. So there you go. I also have these seed heads, which are sort of grass-like seed heads. You see, very narrow, but with quite a few of them. Again, this is going to make up a different shape. They have a kind of purpley look. So it works quite well, again, with the arrangement. Again, different heights, different forms, different textures. And that's what we need when we're making our group. And I think they work quite well. So I'm going to put them in the other container. And again, doesn't need any water, doesn't need any care other than just arranging them, putting them into something nice and giving them to someone you like, or decorating where you live, or your bedroom, or the sitting room. And again, pretty patterns on the container here, the milk container. So you're reusing plastic and it's not costing you anything. So there are all sorts of containers you can use. So those are the fun small ones. If you have a bigger jar, if you have longer flowers, you could do something in a taller jar like this one, where things are, it's the same premise really, the same idea of different colors, different textures, different forms and so on. And so they're very easy to use. And I'm really pleased that having made the effort to dry the flowers, I've now got something I can play with, enjoy, how to design them, how to do them, and they're going to last all winter. So you're not having to spend a penny on buying flowers until the spring bulbs come up. So another thing you can do with these dried flowers, just very quickly, is if you have an old ring left over from a wreath you made at Christmas, this is a metal one, you can, having made your nice bunches, tie them onto this and make yourself an indoor wreath. So if you had several of these bunches tied round, you could hang that indoors on a door to make a nice, interesting display, something nice to look at and different. Don't put them outside. They won't survive the wind and wet and rain. They're only good for putting inside. But it's a thought. And especially if you've got a natural base for your wreath, it would look even nicer than this metal one, which is the one I happen to have. It might be something you might want to make at the end of the summer to make a nice wreath out of stems from different plants and then use that later in the year. But that can be a quite fun thing to do with your dried flowers if you're feeling dexterous and up to it. Very pretty to use. So for those who perhaps don't have lots of dried flowers or weren't able to do it, but are thinking, well, it would be nice to have something I could display, what can we use? I went out today and yesterday to have a look around to see what I could find that was looking good at this time of year that's actually growing or is in its dormant state. And I found lots and lots of plants that we can use for making indoor displays. Because what we're looking for really is anything that's interesting for us. So it might not be flowering yet. It might be that we have interesting stems. So I'm just going to show you some of the things I found. Now, I looked in my own garden. I looked in my neighbour's garden. I did ask. I got some from a park that I volunteer in. Again, I asked. So always ask if you can take a snip and take a couple of stems of something that you've seen that isn't in your own space. But there's some wonderful shrubs and mostly shrubs now at this time of year. The spring bulbs are not up yet. So I had a look around to see what's interesting. Well, this is a contorted willow. So it's or hazel, actually. I think it's hazel. Sorry, hazel. We know that hazel nuts come from hazel trees, and if you may know that you get catkins. And on this, there are a few catkins just forming. I don't know if you can see them very easily there. There are a few. But what's interesting is the fact that this is a lovely curved, twisted looking stem. So that would be really interesting to put into something. What else? These are just some leaves on a stem, but they can be used to have more things in your arrangement. That's Cotoneaster, which is an evergreen. So evergreens are good to look for. There are other evergreens. I'm not quite sure what this one is called, but there you are, lovely, feathery, nice greenery. We're trying to avoid at this time of the year all the holly and the ivy that we use for Christmas. We want something different, don't we? Here's a variegated piece of evergreen, which is called Pittosporum, which has nice green leaves with little white edges on it and are quite glossy and attractive, again, at this time of year. And another thing which is an evergreen is called Abelia, and it has what's the sort of brown leftovers of what had been flowers, but still there, still robust, they're not going to fall off, just again to give you another texture. So there's lots of greenery that we can look for out there, which is interesting and will make part of a nice display. What else is happening? Well, there is actually quite a lot flowering. You wouldn't think so, but there is. So what have we got here? Well, you may recognise this little yellow flower here, which is winter jasmine. It's actually been flowering all winter. It starts flowering in about November time, but a little bright spark of colour, which looks lovely. Winter jasmine grow as wall shrubs. They're slightly ungainly looking, but it's the wonderful yellow that you get at this time of the year, ages before the yellow of the daffodils and everything else is coming. So those are great to cut. And because they're quite leggy and they grow quite easily, it won't mind that you've cut off a few of the stems and you've got something like that. So that's a lovely yellow winter jasmine. What else did we find? Okay. This flowering viburnum, which is about to, the buds are just beginning to come out. And actually, once you've got it indoors, you'll get more flower. The buds will begin to open more. But this actually has on the ends of the stem, before the leaves are growing in the in the spring, you get these lovely pinky flowers from viburnum, which smells nice too. So in some cases, you're bringing in some scent into the house, which is lovely. Not strong scent, but just a little gentle scent. So this is viburnum bodnantense, and it's called Dawn because it's pink like a girl. Other viburnums also, you might, that doesn't have leaves, but this one is viburnum tinus, which you, again, you might see outside. And it doesn't matter whether you know the name of the shrub or not. The main thing is you've seen something which is interesting. You like the look of the flowers. There's a little flower coming on it as well. And so it'll just give you a little cheery flower to come in January when the weather's not so great and we're feeling a bit low. What else is flowering that I found? Oh, heathers, of course. Heathers at this time of year, winter flowering heathers. So little tiny flowers, but again, a little bit of colour, a little bit of pink, nice, pleasant, small always, of course. So you couldn't put it in a very big arrangement, but you can certainly put it in a small one. And lovely. So those are, and so I've also got a white one too. So a white one there, just giving you, and again, a little bit of colour. So the amount of flowers that we're getting, a daphne here, another little flowering plant, are fantastic. So actually quite a lot of different flowering shrubs. Again, lovely. Can you see the catkins on this one? Drooping down here. So that's going to be a really interesting plant to have. This is called Garrya, and it forms a very big shrub. But again, doesn't matter what it's called, doesn't matter. The main thing is that it's giving you something interesting. And those catkins will open again with the warmth that is in your house. So that's fine for these all to be indoors. So what do we do to make sure that we can use them and they last quite long? They're all slightly shrubby, so it means that the stems are woody and at this time of the year quite hard because we haven't got any new growth yet. So make sure that you cut off about 2 centimeters and make a diagonal cut like that into it, so that you get a slightly angled cut. And what that means is that that cut will now take up water as much as is possible at this time of year. Plants that aren't growing at this time of the year, just bare stems and so on, don't really need water because they're in a dormant state. But these ones with flowers will need some water just to keep them going. So I would suggest that you go through all of your stems once you've taken them. Make sure you put them in water straight away just to keep them going. But then cut off, when you're going to use them, cut off a couple of centimeters on an angled cut, and that will keep them going for a lot longer. So we've got quite a lot of flowering and interesting looking stems. And the other thing that we will have too, if we look for it, are coloured stems. And these are coloured dogwood stems, which at this time of the year are grown particularly so that we can see in the winter the lovely coloured stems. And you'll see here there's a mixture of dark red, a slightly softer red and yellowy colour as well, and the green. Dogwoods or cornus come in various colours. You can always get a black one as well, but these are wonderful to use as just an interesting piece of colour, because although I've shown you there are some flowers on some of the stems that are cut, they're not big flowers and they're not going to give you loads of colour. So by using these coloured stems, you can put some colour into your arrangement, and they're wonderful. They don't mind being pruned. In fact, they're often pruned at this a bit later than this time of year, but to allow them to regrow in the summer. They're like many of these plants that are flowering at this time. They're not native to Britain. They are plants that we've brought in from elsewhere, but dogwoods do particularly well and are great, easy plants to grow in the garden, and these lovely coloured stems, and there's plenty of them here, will really brighten up any arrangement that you want to use. And again, I would suggest that you can either make a small hand-tied arrangement, as we did with the dried flowers, or you can make a taller one, because we've got quite a lot of taller shrubby material here. In this situation, it might be nice to use one of these containers that I talked about, so that they're taller, and you can arrange things as you want. Now, again, the idea should be to try and put things in odd numbers if you can, maybe with one main stem. You know, all depends, of course, on how much you're able to get. But I could say, well, I really like this one with the catkins, so I would like to put that in as a sort of feature plant there. And then add some foliage. So this Pittosporum that I showed you earlier has a different shape from the Garrier's big leaves. So we can pop in a few of those. Again, I've cut it up into 3 and cut off the bottom of the main stem, so that we've got them gradually filling in our container. Well, maybe it would be nice at this point to have some of these nice dark stems too. So I'm going to cut this so it's not quite so long, and pop in a few of those dark stems as well. Now, with these dark stems, it doesn't really matter if you use just the top, or you end up, because they're quite long, using some of the bottom. It's really just having the contrast of the colours in there. There's 3 of those. Maybe I should use some of the ones that are a lighter red as well, the ones that are slightly thinner, and put in quite a lot of those. So good idea if you can get as many as possible of these too. So you could think that if you want to do some arrangements in your space, maybe you could be planting some plants that would allow you to cut them all through the year. And certainly these lovely coloured stems, that's a little bit long, no, that's not bad, are really good for contrasting too. What else do we need? Perhaps something that's a bit lighter. Let's move some of this over. And I think this one, with its sort of rather frothy looking leaves, might work quite well. So I'm going to cut some of those off to use, just to fill it in a bit more. Now remember, nothing is right, nothing is wrong. It's all about what you like. And again, cutting 2 centimeters off the bottom on a diagonal cut. I'm going to keep the bottom bare because it's going to be in water. So I don't put in, I try and take off the bottom little stems and leaves so it doesn't rot off in the water. So let's pop in some of those just to fill it up a bit and to give it a bit more interest too. Here we are, a bit more there. Cut off the bottom bits, put it in. And just keep doing that until you think, oh, it's balanced quite well. It looks nicely full. If you're going to put any arrangement against the wall, then don't bother to fill in the back of it too much, because you want to be able to have it there. What else might be nice? Well, why not give it a little blast of yellow? Again, just to brighten up. There we are. That can give it a really nice little shot of colour. the sort of colour that we'll be getting soon from our narcissus and our daffodils. I'm going to put in some water. And that's just one of the many sort of arrangements you can make with winter flowering plants. But the main thing is to go out and look, see what you can see what you can find. And remember that there are interesting things out there at this time of year. You know, it's not that it's everything is dead and everything is dull. It's worth having little walks, looking in your own garden and seeing what you think might be nice. But I think it's quite fun to do these things and to brighten up your house, and it's free, which is a main thing to do. So let me know what you think, or whether you've been finding things you can make into arrangements, and we can have a chat now that we've finished.
Thank you very much. Caroline, does anybody have any questions or comments they want to share? Have they tried something similar like this? You can put your question or comment in the chat or use the raise hand feature. I will ask you to unmute or turn on your camera and raise your hand or just shout out. Yes, Sarah.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to
Hi.
say thanks very much for that. That was really nice and a good demonstration. And I really liked the looking around for what's available just now. Because just as you were doing it, I was like, ah, darn, I wish we'd kept more dried flowers from the summer. So yeah, it's given me yeah, good thoughts and inspiration. So thanks.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad about that. I think it's this idea of getting away from January, nothing's happening thing, to actually thinking, oh, what can we do? You know, what's possible? And I think dried flowers are wonderful too, because you can keep them for so long. So it's really worth thinking at this time of the year, you know, what could we be growing, or what have I already got that we could use for dried flowers? And then just storing them somewhere safely so you can use them later.
Actually, on that, can I ask,
Yeah.
when you said you wrap them in, is it like tissue paper or?
Just tissue paper. I've just used ordinary white tissue paper that I've kept from, you know, sometimes you get things come in boxes and they've got tissue paper in them. I've just kept old tissue paper because you want to wrap them in something which isn't too hard, really, and is just not going to have any colour in it. So just any tissue paper that you can hang on to, any white tissue paper or something like that. And I just wrap them as you would a sort of a bouquet of flowers, just, you know, round, so that they're completely covered. So it protects them from getting muddled up too. So I've wrapped them in several little bunches so that they're kept, because you can see how tangled they get if you put them together. So that seems to keep them nicely.
That's great. Thank you.
That's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Yeah, we'll soon be able to start thinking about, you know, doing arrangements and bringing in things, bulbs and so on, that are already flowering in the garden. But at the moment, they're still not anywhere near being able to be used.
And have you got any other questions or comments that they want to ask Caroline? Yes, Margaret, just are you wanting to just unmute yourself and voice your question?
Hello there, thank you very much. I really enjoyed that, and it's given me good ideas. But I've noticed that I was just in my allotment this morning and I noticed the sedums, now they're all dried out now, but they've still got a nice kind of reddish pinky colour. So it's amazing what you can find. And it's a kind of good mindful exercise and to be out in the fresh air as well. Yes, it's given me a lot of ideas. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you very much.
Well, that's a pleasure. And you're quite right that, you know, there are flower forms that are still on our plants that we could use. And they're obviously not at the height of their appeal, but they're still interesting to look at. And I think we have to learn to appreciate things in different seasons, and not just at the height of the summer when everything's colourful and beautiful, but, you know, seed heads and things that have perhaps been shaded by cold weather look really interesting. And I think it's worth, I'm glad you had a look around your allotment and saw that. So,
Yes.
and the idea is to make people, yeah, just look and enjoy looking and being outside.
Yes. Well, thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Good, good, I'm glad.
Barney, yes, do you want to unmute and voice your question or comment?
Hi there. Hi, thank you, Caroline. That was great. Daylight lamp on me.
It's all right.
Yeah, I was just thinking it would be nice, almost like a sort of plot to plate to, I suppose it's easy if you've got an established garden, but to go out with participants, with clients and collect stuff and then go through the whole process with them could be a really nice sort of mindful activity as well. So yeah.
Absolutely. That I'm glad that you can think that that would be a good thing for your group to do. And that's the idea, really. Yeah, is that and people can join in whatever abilities that they have. So in the decorating of the milk bottle, plastic bottles, or decorating of anything like that, jam jars, some people would enjoy that more, but they're part of the whole process and part of perhaps looking at the colours and looking at things like that too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's lots of scope with it. It's great. Yeah.
Good, good.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else, feel free to just unmute as well and just start talking to Caroline.
Hopefully everything is self-explanatory, so it's not difficult for you to make some activities out of some of the things we've talked about today.
There's also the social element as well, you know, gets people talking and discussing and what have you got, and it's just a good way of getting people to mix and socialize. And maybe normally they don't speak much, but they can talk about what they're doing, you know. It's a kind of safe environment. That's what I'm trying to say, and people enjoy just discussing what they're making and comparing and stuff like that. It's really a lovely idea, especially this time of year.
I think that's great too. And people always say that being outside is very good for your mental health, which it is, but also having the greenery inside is really good for you too, is actually feeling it and touching it and thinking about how it looks. I'm sure it must give people a certain wellness just doing activities like that too.
Yes, and also confidence that you've made it, you know.
Yeah.
And you might actually like it. So it's really nice. It's soothing to the eye to look at as well. It's just being proud of what you've done, what you've achieved.
Absolutely, and because there's no rules really. I mean, I talked about you should have things in odd numbers, not even. It doesn't really matter, does it? In the end, it's what you want to make and what you think is nice, and you've enjoyed doing it. So you're quite right. You know, it's the activity and the people doing it together, which I think is great.
Yes, I agree.
Good.
Thank you again.